Emma Carter was casually scrolling through Instagram when a familiar profile picture popped up on her feed. Ryan Miller, her boyfriend, had just posted a new status. Her thumb hovered over the screen as she read the caption, "I've fallen for the most beautiful flower." At first, she didn't think much of it. Ryan was never the type to be openly romantic, so seeing him post something like this was already strange. But what really caught her off guard was the tag right below his words. A username that made her stomach drop. Beautiful flower, Madison Carter. For a second, Emma felt like her brain had short-circuited. Madison Carter, her cousin. Her grip on the phone tightened as realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. This wasn't the first time. No, this was the third time Madison had stolen her boyfriend. Emma's chest constricted, heat rushing to her face in a mix of anger, humiliation, and disbelief. 3 times. First was Jake Reynolds in sophomore year, Emma's first serious boyfriend. 1 week after Madison met him, he was suddenly not sure about his feelings anymore. Then came Brandon Cole, the guy Emma had really thought was different. They had been together for 6 months, and yet the moment Madison came into the picture, he had accidentally fallen for someone else. And now Ryan? Emma's hand trembled as she tapped on Madison's profile, scrolling through her latest posts. There it was, a new picture of Madison and Ryan together at a cafe, laughing over coffee like they didn't have a care in the world. The caption, "Some things are just meant to be." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped Emma's lips. Unbelievable. Her blood boiled as she stormed out of her room, her feet moving before she could even think. Within minutes, she was outside Ryan's house, knocking sharply on the door. It swung open, revealing Ryan in his hoodie and sweatpants, a look of mild surprise on his face. "Emma?" he said, as if he wasn't expecting her to come. Emma shoved her phone in his face. "Explain this." Ryan barely glanced at the screen before sighing, rubbing the back of his neck. "Emma, I didn't plan for this to happen." Emma's breath caught in her throat. He's not even denying it. "Love just happens, you know," he added, shrugging like this was no big deal. Emma clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. "Love just happens?" she repeated, her voice dangerously calm. Ryan exhaled, as if he were the one suffering here. "Look, Madison and we just clicked. I can't control my feelings, Emma." Emma stared at him, her anger so intense that for a moment she couldn't even speak. Then, "Emma?" a sickeningly sweet voice called from behind Ryan. Emma didn't need to look to know who it was. Madison Carter. Her cousin peeked over Ryan's shoulder, her blonde hair perfectly curled, her lips forming a small, innocent pout, like she hadn't just destroyed Emma's relationship for the 3rd time. "I really didn't mean for this to happen, but you can't stop love, right?" Madison said, her voice soft, as if she were the victim here. Emma saw red. Her breath came out in short, sharp bursts as she forced herself to take a step back. She had let this happen twice before. She had been too shocked, too hurt to do anything but watch, as Madison smiled, apologized, and walked away with her boyfriend. But this time, not again. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat and slowly turned away, ignoring the way Ryan and Madison exchanged glances as if they had already moved on. Fine. They could have each other. Because this time, Emma Carter wasn't just going to sit back and let Madison win. Her eyes flickered across the street to where Lucas Hayes was standing with his teammates, casually drinking from a water bottle. Tall, brooding, unapproachable. The school's academic golden boy, star of the debate team, and the one guy Madison had been crushing on for years, but had never once been able to get close to. Emma smirked to herself. "You like stealing from me?" she thought, her heartbeat steadying with renewed determination. "Fine. Let's see how you feel when I take something you'll never get." And just like that, her plan for revenge began. Emma knew she couldn't just walk up to Lucas Hayes and suddenly make herself a part of his life. It wasn't that simple. Lucas wasn't like other guys. He wasn't someone you could flirt with in the hallway and expect a playful response. He wasn't the type to throw casual smiles or entertain random conversations. He was distant, untouchable. With his dark, sharp eyes and an almost permanent look of disinterest, Lucas had built a reputation of being unapproachable. His intelligence was intimidating, his presence commanding. Even teachers treated him with a level of respect they rarely gave to other students. Girls admired him from afar, but no one dared to try anything because everyone who had attempted to get close had failed spectacularly. And Madison? Emma knew for a fact that her dear cousin had been obsessing over Lucas for years, yet she had never once managed to break through that ice. That was what made him the perfect target for Emma's plan. Madison could have Ryan Miller. Emma had no interest in winning him back. He wasn't worth it. But Lucas? Lucas was a prize Madison would never, ever get. And Emma was going to make sure of it. She wasn't stupid. She knew that walking up to Lucas and trying to start a conversation would get her nothing but silence and a raised eyebrow. No, if she wanted to get his attention, she had to be smarter. She needed something he couldn't ignore. And she had just the thing. Emma wasn't just any student at Westbridge High. She had a secret identity, one that most people didn't even know about. She was E.C. Bloom, an online writer with a growing audience. For the past 2 years, she had been publishing short stories on an anonymous writing platform. Some were romantic, some were tragic, but all of them had one thing in common. They had a way of making people talk. And now she was about to use that skill for revenge. That night, Emma sat at her desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She took a deep breath. Then she started typing. Title: The Silent Devotion of the Ice King. Summary: for years he watched her from a distance, never speaking, never interfering, just existing on the edges of her world, a presence too cold to be approached, yet too constant to be ignored. He memorized her favorite songs, her daily routines, the way she bit her lip when she was nervous, but he never said a word, not even when she cried, not even when she fell in love with someone else, because he was the Ice King, and Ice Kings do not melt. Emma smirked. It was perfect. Then, for the final touch, she added a tag that would ensure people took notice, based on a true story. It was a bold move, but Emma knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't just any story. This was a trap. And soon, everyone, including Lucas himself, would walk right into it. Emma went to bed feeling strangely satisfied. By the time she woke up, her story had gone viral. She groggily reached for her phone, expecting to see maybe a few dozen notifications at most. Instead, her screen was blowing up. Hundreds of comments, hundreds. She blinked. Then she started reading. Wait, am I crazy to sound exactly like Lucas Hayes? The coffee shop, the library, the way he acts, this has to be about him. OMG. The Ice King? That's literally what people at school call him. Does this mean Lucas actually has a secret crush on someone? Emma's lips curled into a slow, satisfied grin. This is working better than I expected. She scrolled further. More people were theorizing, debating, analyzing every single word she had written. Some of them were convinced that Lucas had a secret crush on someone at Westbridge. Some were even trying to guess who the girl was. What if it's Madison Carter? She's always had a thing for him. Nah, no way. The story makes it sound like the Ice King is secretly watching from a distance. Madison's been trying to get his attention forever, and he's never cared. Then who is it? Emma smirked. That was the beauty of her plan. There was no answer, because there was no real girl. She had made it all up. But that didn't matter. The seed had been planted, and people were obsessed. By the time she arrived at school, she could feel the shift in energy. People were whispering, huddled in groups, talking. Her story had become a phenomenon overnight. And at the very center of it all, Lucas Hayes. Emma was riding high on her success, enjoying the way people were buzzing with speculation. Everything was going perfectly, until a notification popped up on her phone. A direct message. She clicked on it, and her breath caught in her throat. Lucas Hayes, we need to talk. Emma stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She had expected people to talk about the story. She had expected gossip and wild theories, but she hadn't expected him to contact her directly. For the first time since she started this plan, she felt a flicker of doubt. Did I push too far? Did I make a mistake? No. She forced herself to take a breath. Lucas reaching out to her meant one thing, and one thing only. He had noticed her. And that was exactly what she wanted. A slow, excited thrill crept through her veins. She typed back, her fingers steady. About what? A moment later, another notification appeared. Lucas, don't play dumb. Meet me after school. Emma's pulse spiked. The Ice King had spoken. And now she had to face him. Emma Carter had been riding a wave of success for the past 24 hours. Her story, the silent devotion of the Ice King, had blown up overnight, spreading like wildfire through every group chat, every social media page, and every whispered conversation at Westbridge High. Everywhere she went, people were talking about him. Lucas Hayes, the real-life Ice King, the untouchable, unreadable boy who now had an entire school obsessed with the idea that he might secretly be in love with someone. And Emma? She was loving every second of it. As she made her way to the cafeteria for lunch, she could hear snippets of conversations floating through the air. Do you think the Ice King actually has feelings for someone? What if this story is real? Like, what if it's actually about Lucas? I heard he hasn't commented on it at all. Maybe it's because it's true. Emma fought the urge to grin like an idiot. This was going even better than she expected. She had planned for people to talk, but she hadn't expected the entire school to fixate on it like this. Theories were running wild, people were analyzing every move Lucas had ever made, and some were even trying to guess who the mysterious girl in the story might be. Even Madison Carter, her cousin-turned-nemesis, had been visibly annoyed this morning when she overheard a group of girls wondering why Lucas had never shown any interest in her. Poor Madison, Emma thought mockingly. Guess your dream guy has other things on his mind. She grabbed her tray of food and made her way to an empty table. Just as she was about to take a bite of her sandwich, a shadow fell over her. A very tall, very imposing shadow. A chill ran down Emma's spine. She looked up, and her heart stopped. Lucas Hayes was standing right in front of her. For a split second, Emma thought she had imagined him, because there was no way Lucas Hayes, the most untouchable person in the entire school, was standing at her table, staring straight at her. His dark eyes were unreadable, his face devoid of expression, and then, in a voice so calm and low that it sent a shiver down her spine, he spoke. So, I'm your secretly devoted Ice King? Emma choked on her food. Literally. She coughed, grabbing her water and taking a desperate sip, her brain completely short-circuiting. Oh my God, this was not happening. She could not be sitting here, in the middle of the cafeteria, with Lucas Hayes towering over her, quoting her own story back at her. She tried to form words, any words, but all that came out was a strangled sound of panic. And then, before she could even recover, a burst of laughter erupted from behind Lucas. Emma barely had time to process what was happening before she saw 3 of Lucas's friends pulling out their phones, their faces lit with amusement. One of them, Jason Lee, one of the school's most notorious troublemakers, grinned as he cleared his throat dramatically and started reading out loud. He waits outside her dorm in the rain, hoping for just a glimpse of her shadow against the window. The cafeteria exploded with laughter. Emma felt her soul leave her body. Her face burned red hot, and she wanted nothing more than to crawl under the table and disappear forever. This was bad. This was so bad. She had expected people to talk about her story. She had not expected Lucas's own friends to start performing dramatic readings of it in the middle of lunch. And Lucas? He wasn't laughing. No, he was watching her, with a gaze so sharp, so intense, that Emma felt like he was peeling away every layer of her mind, seeing straight through her. Then he did something even worse. He tilted his head ever so slightly, a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. "Nice work, author," he said smoothly. Then, with a slow, deliberate pause, he leaned down just enough that his voice was meant for her ears only. "But what happens in the next chapter?" Emma forgot how to breathe. By now, half the cafeteria was watching the scene unfold, eyes darting between Emma and Lucas like they were the main characters in a live drama. Emma's brain was working overtime, trying to find a way out of this mess. She needed to say something, anything, but all she could do was stare at him, her pulse hammering in her ears. Lucas didn't move. He just stood there, calm and composed, as if he had all the time in the world. And that was what made everything so much worse. Because he wasn't embarrassed, he wasn't flustered. He was enjoying this. The realization hit Emma like a ton of bricks. Lucas Hayes, the Ice King himself, was playing with her. Her fingers clenched around the edge of her tray. Oh, hell no. She refused to let him have the upper hand. Taking a deep breath, she forced a smirk onto her lips. "Well," she said, her voice steadier than she expected, "I guess you'll just have to wait for the next update like everyone else." The moment the words left her mouth, the cafeteria let out a collective, "Ooh!" Jason burst into laughter, slapping the table. "Damn, she really said that." Lucas's smirk did not waver. Instead, his eyes flickered with something. Amusement, intrigue, maybe even a challenge. "Is that so?" he murmured. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, completely unfazed, completely in control. Emma released a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She had survived, barely. But as she looked around and saw the way people were still buzzing with excitement, still whispering about what had just happened, a terrifying thought crept into her mind. This wasn't over. Lucas Hayes had acknowledged her. And now she had his attention, for better or for worse. Emma Carter had been sure of one thing when she left the cafeteria that day. Lucas Hayes would avoid her like the plague. I mean, why wouldn't he? She had practically called him out in front of half the school, turned him into a walking urban legend, and now, thanks to her story, people were obsessed with him in a way they had never been before. Lucas wasn't the type to seek attention. He was cold, untouchable, and always kept himself at a comfortable distance from people. So naturally, Emma assumed he'd pretend she didn't exist from now on. That was the logical outcome. That was how things were supposed to go. And yet, the next day, Lucas Hayes did something very, very strange. He started appearing everywhere she went. It started in the library. Emma had chosen her usual spot, a secluded corner near the window, far from the noisy study groups. She had just opened her laptop when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up, expecting to see some random student searching for a seat. But no, it was Lucas. And before she could even process what was happening, he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. Emma froze. Her entire body locked up. Lucas didn't say a word. He just took out a book and started reading, completely ignoring her, as if he always sat there, as if this was totally normal. Emma stared at him, waiting for an explanation. None came. Minutes passed. 10, 15, 20. Lucas never even looked at her. The only reason Emma knew he was aware of her presence was because of one thing. Every time she shifted in her chair, his eyes would flicker ever so slightly from behind his book, like he was watching her, like he was waiting for something. Emma clenched her jaw and forced herself to focus on her laptop. Fine, two could play this game. She wasn't going to let him get to her. But that was just the beginning. Later that afternoon, Emma decided she needed a break. She headed to her favorite coffee shop off campus, ordered a caramel macchiato, and found a quiet booth by the window. Just as she was about to take her first sip, the doorbell jingled, and in walked Lucas Hayes. Emma nearly spilled her drink. No way. She watched as he strolled up to the counter, his hands tucked into his pockets. The barista greeted him like she always did with new customers. "What can I get you?" Lucas glanced over his shoulder, right at Emma. Then, in a completely unreadable tone, he said, "I'll have a caramel macchiato." Emma almost choked. What the hell? Lucas had never even been to this coffee shop before, and now, out of nowhere, he was ordering the exact same drink as her? Emma pressed her lips together, gripping her cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. He was messing with her. He had to be. Lucas took his drink, walked past her table, and without sparing her a glance. He sat at the booth directly across from her, not next to her, not a few tables away, directly across from her. The entire time, he never spoke, never looked at her. He just sat there, casually drinking his coffee, as if this was all part of his daily routine. Emma could feel her sanity slowly slipping away. By the third day, it was becoming a pattern. Everywhere Emma went, Lucas was there. Sometimes he sat nearby, sometimes he walked past her. Sometimes he just existed within her peripheral vision, close enough that she knew he was there, but never saying a word. And the worst part? People were starting to notice. At lunch, Emma was eating with her friend Olivia when one of Lucas's teammates, Blake Carter, suddenly yelled across the cafeteria, "Hey Lucas, did you read today's update? Looks like the Ice King is falling in love." Emma froze mid-bite. Lucas, who had been sitting with his team, didn't even look up. He just took a sip of his drink and said, completely deadpan, "Yeah, I read it." Emma nearly choked on her sandwich. "He what?" A ripple of laughter spread through the cafeteria. Olivia nudged Emma under the table. "Wait, he actually read your story?" Emma wanted to scream. Because this was not supposed to happen. Lucas was not supposed to acknowledge it. He was not supposed to keep showing up, and he was definitely not supposed to be reading her updates. Emma's mind was spinning. What is he playing at? By the time Emma got home that evening, she was ready to scream into a pillow. She needed to focus. She needed to ignore Lucas and finish her next update, but the words weren't coming. She sat at her desk, staring at the blank document, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her thoughts were all over the place. Every time she tried to write, all she could think about was Lucas's voice in the cafeteria. "Yeah, I read it. Why?" Emma groaned and ran her hands through her hair. Her phone buzzed. She reached for it absently and then froze, because there, staring back at her, was a notification from Lucas Hayes, a direct message. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She clicked it open, and the message was simple. "Lucas Hayes. So, do I confess to her in the next update?" Emma forgot how to breathe. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind screaming 1,000 different things at once. What the hell? Lucas Hayes had just slid into her DMs, and not just for any reason. He was asking about her story, the story that was loosely based on him. Emma stared at the message, her pulse racing. Was he teasing her? Was he challenging her? Or worse, was he actually interested? Her hands shook as she typed back, "That depends. Do you want to?" She hit send before she could think twice. Seconds later, another notification popped up. "You tell me, author." Emma squeezed her phone so hard she thought it might crack. This was not supposed to happen, and yet Lucas Hayes was making sure that it did. Emma Carter had officially lost control of the situation. When she had first written The Silent Devotion of the Ice King, she had expected gossip, she had expected speculation, but she had not expected this. Lucas Hayes was not avoiding her. He was not ignoring her. Instead, he was actively making his presence known, appearing wherever she was, sitting just close enough that she could feel his presence, but never so close that anyone could call it a coincidence. And now, to make things worse, Emma was starting to anticipate it. It was happening so gradually that she almost didn't notice it. At first, every time Lucas showed up, she would tense up, waiting for him to say something, some kind of sarcastic comment, some teasing remark about her story, but he never did. Instead, he just existed within her space, silent but impossible to ignore. In the library, He would take the seat across from her, flipping through a book while she tried and failed to focus on her assignments. At the coffee shop, he would order the same drink as her, casually sipping it without acknowledging her presence, like this was their routine now. During lunch, his friends would laugh and tease him about her story, but Lucas himself never reacted. He just let it happen. And the worst part, Emma was getting used to it. She had trained herself to expect him. So much so that on the rare occasion when he wasn't randomly sitting across from her, drinking his coffee in complete silence, she found herself feeling off, like something was missing. That realization made her panic. What the hell is wrong with me? This was not the plan. She was supposed to be in control. She was supposed to be leading the game, not sitting around wondering where he was. She needed to snap out of it, and yet she didn't know how. The day everything changed, it rained. Hard. Emma had been in the middle of her last class, watching as the sky darkened outside the window. The soft patter of rain against the glass slowly turned into a heavy downpour. When the final bell rang, she cursed under her breath. Damn it. I forgot my umbrella. Everyone else had prepared for the storm. Students pulled out their umbrellas, slipping on raincoats before heading outside. Emma, she just stood in the doorway, staring at the sheets of water cascading from the sky, mentally debating if she should just make a run for it. It's fine, it's just rain. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted her bag and stepped forward, only to suddenly find herself sheltered in darkness. Emma blinked. The rain had stopped falling on her. Or rather, something was blocking it. She slowly looked up, and her heart stopped. A black umbrella was hovering over her, and holding it was Lucas Hayes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Lucas just stood there, his grip relaxed around the handle of the umbrella, his face as unreadable as ever. Emma's brain completely shut down. What is happening? Why is he here? Why is he... Are you planning to just stand there? Lucas's voice was quiet, but it snapped her out of her daze immediately. Emma inhaled sharply, forcing herself to move. I know. I was just... She shook her head. Never mind. Her heart raced as she stepped forward, falling into stride beside him. Lucas didn't say anything. He just walked beside her, holding the umbrella at an angle to make sure she stayed dry. It was such a simple gesture. And yet, Emma felt like her entire world had tilted on its axis. She stole a glance at him out of the corner of her eye. Lucas's face was calm, his expression impossible to read. The rain fell in steady sheets around them, drumming softly against the fabric of the umbrella. And for the first time since this entire mess had started, Emma didn't know what to do. They walked for a long time in complete silence. The world around them blurred into nothing but the sound of rain and the rhythmic sound of their footsteps. Emma should have felt uncomfortable. But she didn't. In fact, she felt something else entirely, something she didn't want to acknowledge. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her jacket as she bit down on her lip, trying to force the thought away. No, this is nothing. It's just an umbrella. Just him being polite. She couldn't let this mean anything. She couldn't let herself start thinking, your story. Lucas's voice pulled her out of her thoughts so suddenly that she almost tripped over her own feet. She turned her head sharply. What? He didn't look at her. The Ice King. His gaze remained straight ahead. Who's he supposed to be in love with? Emma's breath hitched. It was a simple question, a harmless one, and yet she felt her pulse skyrocket. She hesitated. I mean, it's fiction, so... Is it? Her stomach flipped. She turned to look at him, but Lucas finally met her gaze, and the intensity in his eyes left her speechless. For a split second, she thought he was going to say something else. But then, he just tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then, without another word, he turned back to the path ahead. Emma felt like she could finally breathe again. But her heartbeat? It told a different story. By the time they reached her street, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle. Lucas stopped walking. Emma took a breath, forcing herself to say something, anything, but Lucas beat her to it. Next time. Emma blinked. What? Don't forget your umbrella. His voice was unreadable. You won't always have someone to cover for you. Her breath caught. Lucas handed her the umbrella without waiting for her to respond, then turned and walked away. Emma stood there, gripping the handle tightly as she watched his figure disappear into the misty rain. And then finally, she allowed herself to face the one thing she had been trying so desperately to ignore. She had started this as a game, a strategy to get revenge on Madison. But now? Somewhere along the way, she had stopped thinking of Lucas as just a pawn. And that realization terrified her, because the worst part of all, she didn't think she could stop this anymore, even if she wanted to. Emma Carter had spent the past few days spiraling. Ever since the umbrella incident, her mind had been an absolute mess. She had spent so much time convincing herself that Lucas Hayes was just a pawn in her game, that all of this was just a way to get back at Madison. But now she wasn't sure who was chasing who anymore. Because everywhere she turned, Lucas was there. Not in an obvious way, not in the way an obsessed suitor would be. No. He was always just close enough to make her aware of him, close enough to make her wonder if he was doing it on purpose. And worst of all, she had stopped trying to avoid him. That fact alone scared her more than anything. So that night, as she sat at her desk, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen, she made a dangerous decision. She was going to end this. Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The scene she was about to write would change everything. Her readers had been waiting for it. She had been delaying it, writing around it, building tension, making excuses. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had been avoiding it because she was afraid. Afraid that once she wrote it down, it would feel too real. Afraid that once she put those words into her story, she wouldn't be able to separate fiction from reality anymore. But it was too late for that now. Taking a deep breath, she let go. And she wrote. She turned to leave, but before she could take a step, he grabbed her wrist. Don't. Her heart pounded. Why? She whispered. Why can't I? He hesitated. Just for a second, just long enough for her to see the conflict in his eyes. Then, in a voice so soft she almost didn't hear it, he said, Because I love you. Emma exhaled sharply, her hands trembling over the keyboard. There, it was done. The Ice King had confessed. She stared at the screen, her pulse hammering against her ribs, her chest rising and falling as if she had just run a marathon. Then, before she could overthink it, she hit upload. The update had barely been live for 2 minutes before Emma's phone buzzed. She frowned, glancing at the screen. Her stomach flipped violently. Lucas Hayes. You wrote that the Ice King confessed. Is this based on reality or just fiction? Emma's entire body locked up. Her fingers tightened around her phone. Her heart slammed against her ribs. For a long moment, she just stared at the message, unable to process the fact that he had seen it already, that he had read it, that he was asking her about it. A cold, unfamiliar panic wrapped around her lungs because she knew this was it. This was the moment she had been dreading. Lucas had given her a choice. She could laugh it off, play dumb, tell him it was just a story, or she could tell the truth. She could admit that the lines between fiction and reality had blurred so much that she didn't even know where they ended anymore. Emma swallowed hard, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her mind screamed at her to be careful, to think this through. But instead she typed, Emma Carter, what do you think? She hesitated only for a second before hitting send. Then she waited. The message was seen instantly. Emma's breath hitched. Her hands tightened around her phone as she stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. But none came. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Emma's stomach twisted painfully. Lucas Hayes was not replying. She refreshed the chat. Again and again and again. Nothing. For the first time since this entire game started, Emma felt something foreign settle in her chest. Regret, doubt. Maybe she had pushed too far. Maybe she had ruined everything. Maybe Her phone buzzed. Emma's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed it instantly, her pulse hammering. But it wasn't a message, it was a notification. From her story. A new comment. Emma's stomach tightened as she clicked on it. Her breath caught in her throat, because the comment was from an anonymous account, and it read, "If the Ice King confesses, does that mean the story is over?" Emma's entire body froze. Her fingers trembled over the screen, her vision blurring slightly as she reread the words. Was it him? Was it just a coincidence? Or was Lucas Hayes trying to tell her something without actually saying it? Emma had never felt so unsure in her entire life. She didn't know how long she sat there, staring at the screen. But eventually, she forced herself to put her phone down. She lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling, her heartbeat a chaotic mess. She had thought she was in control of this. She had thought this was her game. But now she wasn't so sure, because for the first time since this had all started, she realized that if this was a game, then maybe, just maybe, Lucas Hayes was the one winning. And that thought terrified her. Emma Carter had barely slept the night before. Her mind wouldn't let her. Between Lucas's message, his silence, and that cryptic comment on her story, she had spent the entire night replaying everything in her head, trying to figure out what it all meant. And now she had to deal with something even worse. Because if there was one person in the world who could sniff out a situation like a bloodhound on the hunt, it was Madison Carter. And Emma had seriously underestimated how quickly her cousin would catch on. It started that morning. Emma had just walked into school when she felt it, that unsettling sensation of being watched. At first, she thought it was Lucas again, but when she glanced to the side, her stomach dropped. Because it wasn't Lucas, it was Madison, and she was staring directly at her. Emma froze mid-step, gripping the strap of her bag tighter. Madison was standing near the lockers, her arms crossed, lips curled into a smirk that immediately put Emma on edge. That was Madison's "I know something you don't know" look. And that was never a good sign. Emma quickened her pace, refusing to engage, but she could feel it. Madison's eyes burning into her back as she walked away. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to be good. Emma didn't have to wait long to find out what Madison was up to, because by lunchtime it became painfully clear. She had just grabbed her tray of food when she saw them. Madison and Lucas, standing together, talking. Emma's stomach twisted into a knot. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see the way Madison was leaning in slightly, her expression filled with fake concern. Lucas, on the other hand, his face was unreadable. Emma clenched her jaw, moving closer, her entire body tensed like a coil. And that's when she heard it. "Lucas, I just think you should know." Madison's voice was soft, gentle, a tone she reserved for when she was trying to sound sweet and innocent. "Emma is just using you for attention." Emma stopped dead in her tracks. Madison kept going, her voice dripping with pretend sincerity. "She doesn't actually like you, she just wants people to talk about her." Emma saw red, her entire body heated with anger, her fingers tightening into fists at her sides. This was exactly what Madison always did. Whenever Emma had something, anything, Madison couldn't stand it. She had done it with her boyfriends. She had done it with her friendships. And now she was trying to do it with Lucas. Oh, hell no. Emma didn't hesitate. She stormed forward, loud enough that Madison and Lucas both turned to face her. "If you're so confident," Emma said, her voice sharp as glass, "why don't you ask him yourself?" Madison's expression faltered. For a second, just a split second, she looked caught off guard. Then she quickly recovered, flipping her hair over her shoulder and letting out a fake laugh. "Emma, sweetie, I was just trying to help." "No, you weren't." Emma cut her off, glaring. "You never try to help me. You just can't stand the idea of me having something that you don't." The tension snapped like a rubber band. People were starting to notice. Nearby tables had gone quiet, students watching intently as the scene unfolded. Madison sighed dramatically, shaking her head. I don't expect you to see it, Emma, but I just thought Lucas deserved to know the truth before he gets too invested. She turned back to Lucas, giving him a sweet, pitying look. I mean, you don't actually believe she likes you, right? And that's when Lucas spoke. He didn't even hesitate. He didn't glance at Emma. He didn't look confused. He just took a step forward, his gaze locking directly onto Madison's. You're wrong. Madison blinked. What? Lucas tilted his head slightly, his expression calm but firm. I was the one who chased her. Emma's heart stopped. Madison's jaw tightened ever so slightly. That's impossible. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Is it? The cafeteria was dead silent. Emma felt like her entire world had tilted, because Lucas had just, in front of everyone, destroyed Madison's entire argument in one sentence. Madison's face twisted in frustration, but she recovered quickly, forcing out a laugh. Lucas, come on, you don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending. His tone was flat, unwavering. Madison's fake smile wavered. For the first time, she looked unsure. And Emma? Emma just stood there, heart pounding, mind racing. She should say something. She should do something. But she couldn't, because Lucas had just turned the entire situation on its head. And the way he was looking at her now, like she was the only thing that mattered in the room, it was too much. Emma felt her chest tighten, her throat dry. Madison's eyes flickered between them, realization dawning in her expression. And then, with a final huff, she let out an irritated sigh and spun on her heel. Whatever, she muttered, storming off. Lucas didn't watch her go. He didn't look away from Emma, not once, and for the first time since this all began, Emma had no idea what to do next. Emma Carter didn't know why she was here. The park was quiet this time of day. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting golden hues across the sky, stretching long shadows across the empty benches and winding pathways. She sat alone on the cool wooden bench, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the shifting colors above. She had needed space. After what had happened in the cafeteria, the way Lucas had so casually shattered Madison's lies, the way he had looked at her, unwavering, unshaken, Emma hadn't known how to deal with it. With him. Because something had changed. She had felt it, deep in her bones, the moment he had said it. I was the one who chased her. It was so simple, but it had undone her completely. And now? Now she felt trapped in a storm of emotions she didn't know how to name. The soft sound of footsteps barely registered at first. It wasn't until a familiar shadow stretched beside hers that Emma realized someone had joined her. She stiffened instantly, because she didn't need to look to know who it was. Lucas Hayes. He didn't say anything. He just sat down beside her, his posture relaxed, his gaze following the slow descent of the sun over the treetops. The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy, but not uncomfortable. Emma swallowed, gripping the edges of her sleeves. How did you find me? She asked, her voice softer than she intended. Lucas didn't look at her. You always come here when you need to think. Her breath caught. He had noticed that? Before she could process it, he continued. You wrote about me waiting in the rain. Emma's entire body froze. Lucas's voice was steady, quiet but firm. But what you don't know is, I actually did that once. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Slowly, almost mechanically, she turned to look at him. Lucas was staring straight ahead, his expression unreadable, the golden light of the sunset casting a glow against his sharp features. What? Her voice barely came out. You think I don't read your stories? His lips twitched slightly, almost like he found the thought amusing. Emma didn't know what to say. You wrote that the Ice King stood outside her window in the rain, Lucas said, finally turning his head to look at her. His eyes locked onto hers. Unreadable. Intense. But I'm not the Ice King, Emma. I'm just me. Her throat dried up. Lucas leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees, his fingers loosely intertwined. You want the truth? He asked, voice lower now. Emma couldn't breathe. I did wait in the rain. Her stomach tightened painfully. Why? She whispered. Lucas held her gaze, and for the first time since she had met him there was no mask, no teasing, no games. "Because I was waiting for you." The world stopped. Emma felt it, the way everything seemed to slow down, the way the air between them thickened into something heavy, charged, impossible to ignore. Lucas didn't look away, and neither could she. No more fiction. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it sent shivers down her spine. "I like you." Emma's pulse roared in her ears. She had imagined this moment before, 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, but never like this. Never so raw, never so undeniably real. Her mind raced. She should say something. She should do something, but all she could do was sit there, staring at him, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from beneath her. Because this wasn't a game anymore. This wasn't a story. This was Lucas Hayes, serious, unguarded, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. And that was terrifying. Emma swallowed, forcing air into her lungs. You don't mean that." It was weak, pathetic even, but it was the only defense she had left. Lucas let out a short breath, almost like he expected her to say that. "You really think I would lie about this?" Emma flinched at the directness of his words. I don't know," she admitted, "because how could she? How could she believe him, when she had spent so much time convincing herself that this was just a game?" Lucas didn't speak for a moment. Then he leaned back against the bench, tilting his head slightly, studying her. "Tell me something, Emma." Her breath hitched. "If this is just a game to you, if none of this is real, why do you look so scared right now?" Emma's hands curled into fists. "I'm not. You are." His voice was quiet but firm, certain. Emma's entire body betrayed her, her heartbeat hammering so loudly she was afraid he could hear it, because he was right. She was terrified. Not of him, not of his confession, but of herself. Of the way her heart ached at his words, of the way she wanted to believe him, of the way she knew, deep down, that she had already fallen too far to stop this now. Lucas exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair before looking back at her. "I don't expect you to say anything right now." Emma stared at him, struggling to understand how he could be so calm while she felt like she was falling apart. "But you should at least stop lying to yourself." Her chest tightened. Lucas stood up, stretching slightly before shoving his hands into his pockets. "Come on." Emma blinked. "What?" "I'm walking you home." Emma's lips parted in disbelief. You just told me you like me, and now you're acting like what?" Lucas raised an eyebrow, amused now. "Like this isn't a big deal." "It is a big deal." His expression softened slightly. "But I meant what I said. I'm not forcing you to answer me tonight." Emma couldn't think, couldn't breathe, because how the hell was she supposed to answer him at all? Lucas didn't push further. He just waited. And after what felt like an eternity, Emma let out a breath and stood up beside him. Neither of them spoke as they walked, but the silence between them, it wasn't empty. It was filled with everything left unsaid, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Emma Carter had barely processed what had happened last night. Lucas Hayes had confessed. Not just hinted, not just teased. He had flat out told her that he liked her. And then, like it was the simplest thing in the world, he had walked her home, left her standing at her front door with a storm raging inside her chest, and disappeared into the night like he hadn't just turned her entire world upside down. Emma hadn't slept. Her mind had refused to shut up, replaying every second of their conversation, every look, every word. She had spent so long convincing herself that this was just a game, that she was in control. But now, she wasn't sure she had ever been in control, because Lucas Hayes had just flipped the script, and Emma had no idea what to do next. Emma walked into school the next morning, fully prepared to keep her head down and act like everything was normal. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans. She barely made it through the entrance when she heard it. The whispers. "Did you hear what happened last night?" "Wait, so it's true?" "No way. Lucas Hayes? With her?" Emma's stomach dropped. She hadn't even made it to her locker yet, and the rumors were already spreading like wildfire. For a brief, delusional moment, she told herself that maybe, just maybe, people were talking about something else. That was, until Olivia, her best friend, practically barreled into her from across the hallway. "Emma!" Olivia grabbed her arm, eyes wide with barely contained excitement. "You're literally all over the school group chat right now." Emma blinked. "What?" Olivia shoved her phone in Emma's face, and that's when she saw it. A photo of her and Lucas from last night, holding hands, Emma's entire body locked up. Someone had taken a picture of them. Someone had seen them walking together. And now the entire school knew. Emma could not deal with this right now. She snatched Olivia's phone, scrolling through the comments beneath the post. Holy is this real? Lucas Hayes? Actually holding hands with a girl? I thought the Ice King didn't do relationships. Damn, Madison must be losing her mind right now. Okay, but they kinda look cute together. Emma groaned. This cannot be happening. Olivia, on the other hand, looked way too amused. Oh, it's happening. Emma dragged a hand down her face. This is bad. Bad. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Emma, are you serious? Lucas freaking Hayes just publicly held your hand, and now the entire school thinks you're together. That's not bad. That's legendary. Emma let out a strangled sound. That's exactly the problem, because what if it wasn't Lucas just been messing with her? What if this was some elaborate joke she wasn't in on? And most terrifying of all, what if it was true? Emma felt lightheaded. I need to sit down. Olivia laughed, grabbing her by the arm. Come on, let's get to class before you pass out in the hallway. By the time Emma walked into English class, she could feel the stares. People weren't even trying to be subtle about it. Half the room immediately turned to look at her, their faces a mix of curiosity, shock, and amusement. Emma ducked her head, moving toward her usual seat, only to stop short when she saw him. Lucas, already sitting at his desk, calm as ever, completely unfazed by the chaos happening around them. Emma hesitated. For a brief second, their eyes met. Lucas didn't blink, didn't look away. Then he smirked. Emma's stomach flipped. She quickly turned away, pretending to be extremely interested in the floor as she slid into her seat. The whispers started up again. Do you think she'll say something? What if it's just a rumor? But there's a picture, and then a voice cut through the noise like a knife. So, is it true? Emma's breath caught. Slowly she looked up. Across the room, Rebecca Moore, one of the more popular girls in school, was leaning forward in her chair, staring directly at Lucas. Are you and Emma dating? The room went dead silent. Emma's pulse skyrocketed. Her entire body froze, her hands clenching under the desk. No. This was not how she wanted to have this conversation. Her gaze darted to Lucas, praying that he would just ignore it, that he would change the subject, that he would laugh it off, anything to get the attention off her. But Lucas didn't even hesitate. Without a single flicker of doubt, he reached over, took Emma's hand, and slowly interlocked their fingers. Emma's brain short-circuited. The entire classroom exploded. Emma barely heard the gasps, the laughter, the whispered holy shots echoing around the room. Her entire focus was on Lucas, on his hand wrapped around hers, warm, steady, unwavering. And then he spoke. We are. Emma stopped breathing. The class lost their minds. No freaking way. The Ice King just confirmed it. This is the biggest plot twist of the year. Emma didn't move, didn't speak. She just sat there, staring at their intertwined hands, her brain a mess of static and confusion. Lucas, meanwhile, completely calm, like he hadn't just shattered the entire social hierarchy of their school. Emma turned to him, eyes wide with disbelief. What the hell are you doing? She whispered. Lucas finally looked at her. And then, as if this was the easiest thing in the world, he smirked, confirming the truth. Emma wanted to scream, but instead she did the only thing she could. She squeezed his hand, and he squeezed back. Game. Over. Emma Carter had spent so much of her life writing stories about other people. Fiction had always been her escape, a way to control the narrative, to decide how things played out. And for a long time, she had believed that real life never worked that way, that happy endings were just a thing she wrote about, not something that actually happened. But now she wasn't so sure. Because somehow, without even realizing it, she had become the main character of a story she hadn't meant to write. And for the first time ever, she had no idea how it was going to end. The past week had been a whirlwind of chaos. Ever since Lucas Hayes had casually confirmed their relationship in front of the entire class, Emma had been bombarded with questions. People who had never spoken to her before suddenly wanted to know everything. So, how long has this been going on? Did you guys secretly date before this? Emma, is he actually romantic or is he just faking it for the aesthetic? Emma had spent way too much energy dodging their questions, avoiding eye contact, and praying for the ground to swallow her whole. Lucas, on the other hand, completely unbothered. If anything, he seemed amused by the whole situation. He went about his day completely normally, ignoring the whispers, the stares, the fact that their relationship had basically become a school-wide obsession. And worst of all, he had way too much fun teasing her about it. Famous author Emma Carter, he had murmured one day as he slid into the seat beside her at lunch. How does it feel to have your real-life romance trending on campus? Emma had kicked him under the table. Shut up! But even as she said it, she couldn't ignore the fact that she didn't really mind it. Because as much as the attention was overwhelming, she liked being around him. She liked the way he would casually reach for her hand without thinking about it. She liked how he would wait for her after class, walking her to her next one like it was the most natural thing in the world. And most of all, she liked the way he made her feel like this wasn't just some fleeting high school crush, like this was something real. And that was what scared her the most. Because Emma Carter had spent so much time controlling the narrative. But for the first time ever, she was letting it write itself. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Emma finally sat down to write again. She opened her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard, staring at the empty document in front of her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't writing about unspoken confessions or one-sided love. She wasn't writing about heartache and missed opportunities. This time she was writing a different kind of story. A story where the Ice King and the girl who never believed in happy endings actually got one. She had barely typed the first few sentences when she felt a presence behind her. A shadow fell over her screen. Then, so what happens next? Emma jumped. Her fingers slammed against the keyboard in shock, letters scrambling across the screen as she twisted around. Jesus, Lucas, can you not sneak up on me like that? Lucas Hayes stood behind her, leaning over the back of her chair, his expression completely unrepentant. Not my fault you're easily startled, he said, smirking. Emma narrowed her eyes. What are you even doing here? I was bored, he shrugged. Decided to see what you were up to. I'm writing. Lucas's eyes flickered to her screen. Is that so? His lips curled slightly. New story? Emma hesitated. Then, yeah, Lucas raised an eyebrow. What's it about? Emma exhaled, avoiding his gaze. It's about two people who spent so much time running from their feelings that they almost missed out on something great. Lucas tilted his head slightly, studying her. Sounds familiar. Emma rolled her eyes. You'll just have to wait for the update like everyone else. Lucas chuckled at that, shaking his head. That's not how this works, Carter. Emma blinked. What? And then before she could process what was happening, Lucas leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. Emma's heart stopped. Her mind went completely blank. Lucas pulled back slightly, a lazy smirk playing on his lips. How about we write the next chapter together? Emma felt her entire body short-circuit. She could not deal with him, not now, not ever. So she did the only thing she could. She slammed her laptop shut, grabbed the nearest pillow, and threw it at his face. Lucas laughed, and for the first time in a long time, Emma Carter let herself believe in happy endings. Because maybe, just maybe, she had finally found hers. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.